Johnson, kind enough to join us back in studio. Brandon, great to see you, sir.
Good morning, Bob.
We are going to talk about the appraisal process this morning, right? Okay. From both a buyer's perspective and a seller's vantage, what do buyers and sellers need to know regarding how the appraisal may impact that transaction?
Yeah, that's there's a lot going on in the appraisal process. So it's important to take a step back and just say, what is the purpose or the intent of the appraisal? And really what it is, it's geared towards protecting the lender. So when a lender's loaning you, the buyer, $300,000 or whatever that purchase price is,
Okay.
The lender wants to know that what you're buying it for, it's worth relatively that value. So it's a protection for the lender that they're not overextending themselves based on the condition of the property, the value of the property,
Sure.
all of those things. So that's the intent and the purpose of it. Where and it's not an exact science by any means, and that's where it kind of navigating the appraisal process takes a little bit of experience.
So what goes into that value of a property then?
Sure. So what an appraiser is looking at is they are looking at the quantifiables and specifically comparable properties that have sold in a close proximity,
Okay.
and that's relative based on, urban, rural, all of that, in a relatively recent time frame. Generally 6 months is kind of the rule of thumb. And so some properties are much easier to appraise. There's very similar, what I call apples to apples comparables in a 4-block radius,
Right.
and you can within a few $1,000s say this is what it's worth. Other properties are much more challenging to appraise, and so you can imagine you get 8 different appraisers, you're going to get 8 different values, generally within a range. But the problems lie in those unique properties where there aren't recent comparables, where an appraiser isn't able to use similar recent comparable sales to justify. They have rules they have to apply to their appraisal. And so
Okay.
if they're not able to find the comparables, that's where it gets tough. And what I'll say is, most appraisers, I don't know any appraiser whose intent is making the value short of the purchase price.
Right, they don't start out that way.
They're trying to make it work.
Right.
We can debate this all we want, but the appraisers get a copy of the purchase agreement, so they know what the purchase price is, which seems a little backwards when they're supposed to be saying the value and they know what the purchase price is.
Yeah.
But they know what is on paper that a buyer and seller have agreed to, and then they're looking at the comparables. They're not intently trying to make it short,
Sure.
but where we struggle is if they don't have the data, the recent data, they can support it there. And that
Okay.
doesn't mean it's not necessarily worth that.
Yeah.
It's just they don't have the data that they can use, and that's where the problems arise.
Can you give me for instance, I mean, automatically in my head, I'm thinking about an older neighborhood. Houses haven't been buying or been selling there. Nobody's coming in there for a long time. Very well established, and all of a sudden, Bob decides he's going to sell his house.
Yeah,
Right?
so I was just speaking with an appraiser here this weekend, and she was letting me know that transaction in our office, she was having a tough time getting to the value that it was sold for.
Okay.
And when we discussed the property, and I recalled it right away, and my thought was that property could sell. I could sell that property 5 times for that value or higher.
Sure.
It's that desirable of a property. But the characteristics, to answer your question, that makes it hard for her to get the appraised value is it's a smaller square footage home than typical.
Okay.
It's in a very desirable neighborhood.
Okay.
And it's a very desirable lot in that desirable neighborhood. So the comparables that you're using are in lesser neighborhoods, lesser desirable lots.
Okay.
And so what people pay for aren't necessarily, it's hard to find that concrete data to support it.
Okay, I've got a house that's 20 years old. I've got a house that's 5 years old. Everything is identical. Are they going to appraise the same?
Generally, a 15-year-old differential in age is going to be a little bit different. But
Right.
Are you talking, again, there's all sorts of nuance, right? A 1920s versus a 1915, 1910, when you're talking 100 years old,
Right.
they're going to be lumped together.
Okay.
If you're talking 2000 versus 1985,
Okay.
they're probably going to be separated, right? The homes that I would say are most conducive to running into appraisal concerns are those that are smaller square footage, smaller bedroom, bathroom counts,
Gotcha.
that are updated really nice, all the bells and whistles.
Yeah.
those are hard to compare to, homes of similar size that are just kind of an average condition.
Okay,
That buyers are willing to pay up for that.
Sure.
But it's hard to show that in the data.
When we started this conversation, you had mentioned, you can get 7 or 8 appraisals. You may have 7 or 8 different values then
Yep.
come up. How many appraisals do I need for a property?
It's generally typically one.
Just one.
Yes, so a lender's going to order that. And so a lot of times when you're going through the transaction process, a lot of times if you have 20% down,
Okay.
your lender may do what's called an appraisal waiver. That is a great luxury. If you're putting enough down,
Okay.
they might not even require an appraisal. So it's important to know if you're a buyer, what your percentage down is likely going to dictate the type of appraisal and or if you need one. And it's important to work with your realtor, your agent, to help guide you and say, these are the things I'm, a little bit concerned about, or I have no concerns. Again, it's not an exact science. If you're a seller, you need to know, you always want to negotiate the top dollar.
Right.
I never tell people take less because we have appraisal concerns.
Right.
You always negotiate the most you can, but then here's what we got to do to work with any appraisal concerns we have.
Again, having the experts at your beck and call would be the key, I would think, in working through any of these questions that may pop up. How do we work with you at VoigtJohnson Real Estate?
320-774-2400 or online at VoigtJohnson.com.
Brandon, thank you.
Thank you.